Okay, the name of the story is Tricked on Halloween. I just want to point out, this story takes place sometime after another story I wrote called Amy Rose's Adventures in Magic. You can read that on DeviantArt and Archive of Our Own, though it mostly exists just for fun. In that story, Amy gets a heart wand that can let her do spells, and she might use it toward the end of this story. It makes sense in context, I promise, and if that qualifies as a spoiler, I'm so sorry. I also recorded all of Amy's lines sometime before I narrated the rest of this story, so when she speaks, it might be a little loud compared to the other voice clips, so you might want to turn your volume down. All that aside, hope you enjoy. The evening sky was covered almost completely with ebony clouds, and yet somewhere among those clouds, the full moon could still be seen attempting to drive the darkness away with its distinctive glow. It was the night of Halloween, and the time had come for costumed trick-or-treaters of all ages to venture away from their homes and receive candies from whoever they visited, even if it meant having to face their fears in the process. In Sonic and Tails' case, however, they wouldn't have to face their fears so much as endure being on the receiving end of some unexpected tricks. "You almost ready, Tails?" Sonic called. "Just a minute," Tails replied from the bathroom. "I wanted to surprise you with my new costume, remember?" "Alright, but those candies aren't going to collect themselves," Sonic muttered, straightening the gloves on his hands and adjusting his hat. This year he was dressed as Mario from the Super Mario games. It was the first time he was wearing this costume for Halloween. Finally, the door opened and Tails emerged. As it turned out, he was dressed as none other than Luigi, also from the Mario games. It was the first time Sonic had seen him wearing this costume. As they took a minute to let the coincidence sink in, the Hedgehog and the Fox shared a laugh over how much sense it made in spite of the irony. "This Halloween is gonna be great," Sonic commented, picking up his trick-or-treat bag. "I hope so," Tails replied. He'd also brought a trick-or-treat bag with him for this occasion. "What kind of candies are you looking forward to receiving, Sonic?" "I'm not really sure," Sonic admitted. "Then again, I'm not much of a candy lover. In fact, I think I've had more chili dogs than I've ever had sweets." "It's fine, and that's understandable," Tails replied. "I was just wondering anyway. Let's see what we end up with this year, okay?" "Sounds good," said Sonic. With that, he and Tails headed out of the house. As they proceeded under their trick-or-treating, they could see that many of their friends were doing the same. On the other side of their neighborhood, Shadow, a vampire with some fake fangs and a black cape, was looking bored as Rouge, a dark queen that Sonic figured was inspired by the evil queen from the story of Snow White, was describing something to Shadow that Sonic couldn't quite make out. Close by, Amy, a dark pink witch who held her heart wand in one hand and a black-colored cat-shaped trick-or-treat bag in her other hand, approached one of the houses, with Cream, who was wearing a white bow on her head and some sort of schoolgirl uniform, both of which made her resemble Rin Kagamine from the Japanese Vocaloid franchise, standing next to her, visibly nervous and shivering a bit in fear. But as the door opened, Amy held out her bag, greeting the person with a trick-or-treat, and she received some candy from them. As the girls walked away from the house, Amy placed her hand around Cream's shoulder to reassure her, before offering her an orange lollipop that she'd just received. Cream managed a little smile as she accepted the lollipop and thanked her friend sincerely. And Knuckles, going as a professional boxer, was having a conversation with Team Chaotix, specifically Espio the Ninja and Vector, who was wearing a skeleton costume. Close by was Charmy, wearing an outfit that heavily resembled what Box McCloud from the Star Fox games wore, and pretending to fire from a prop laser gun. "Zap! Zap! 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 Charmy McBee here, reporting for space duty and hoping I get some sweet candies! Zap!" Charmy cried playfully. Espio rolled his eyes, but Knuckles and Vector looked amused. Anyway, Sonic and Tails stopped by one house after another, greeting whoever answered the door with a polite trick-or-treat and thanking them for whatever candies they received. Around 15 minutes later, however, when they decided to explore beyond the neighborhood where Sonic lived, they spotted that someone had put up an orange door in an open spot in the grass. Close to the door was a sign that read "Candy for All in Black," and the sight of it brought an anticipating smile to Tails' face. "Looks like this is our lucky night," said Tails. "Wait a minute," Sonic said, looking a bit skeptical. I've never seen this door or this sign around here before. He turned his head to look at Tails. You might want to stand back, buddy. I've got to make sure this isn't a trick or something. Tails nodded in understanding and watched as Sonic approached the door. Aside from it apparently having appeared out of nowhere, it didn't look particularly suspicious, and especially not ominous. Sonic was almost tempted to pull the door open and see what was waiting behind it, but before he could even touch the doorknob, something happened. A large cloud of gray dust unexpectedly rose to Tails' face with a near inaudible poof, and he could feel a particularly strong tickle find its way into his twitching nose. The unfortunate fox's eyelids lowered as his mouth fell open, and he tilted his neck backward as his breath began to hitch. He was going to sneeze. Tails inhaled 3 times, then broke into an allergic sneezing fit, bringing his upper body forward with each release. None of these sneezes were particularly loud or powerful, but they were abrupt enough to catch Sonic off guard. When he turned around, he could see that Tails had finished sneezing, rubbing his nose adorably with his index finger as small streams of tears emerged from his eyes. A sign he'd just been through an allergy attack, though Sonic couldn't tell what had triggered it at first. "Bless you, buddy," Sonic said. "Thanks," Tails replied, sniffling. "What's the matter? You're not getting sick, are you?" Sonic's suspicion had instantly switched over to concern. "No, I don't think so." Another sniffle as Tails continued to rub his nose, but I saw some dust appear out of nowhere, which made me sneeze. That's weird. Sonic thought to himself, wondering how this could have happened. I can relate to sudden allergy attacks, but I don't see how that could have happened in a place like this. "That would be me!" a familiar voice announced, along with an evil laugh. "Mwah-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha!" Sonic and Tails' eyes widened, and then they looked up. They could see a familiar airship descending into view, and instantly they knew exactly who had been behind this. "Dr. Eggman?" they asked in unison as well as disbelief. "Enjoying your Halloween?" Eggman asked. For Halloween this year, he was dressed as a traditional mad scientist, foregoing his usual clothes. "Well, we were until Tails started sneezing," Sonic commented, sarcastically. "Yes, about that. Don't take it too personally. I was only testing out one of my dust bombs on you. Maybe it wasn't as creative as other things I built, but it was worth it nonetheless," Eggman explained. "But that's only part 1 of this trick, and I believe part 2 is about to begin." "Part 2? Sonic raised an eyebrow. "I don't like the sound of that," Tails whimpered a bit. Eggman pushed a button on his control pad, causing a panel on the bottom of the airship to open. A couple of mechanical arms emerged from it, holding a brown object, the sight of which caused Sonic and Tails to cringe in dawning comprehension. It was this brown object that the mechanical arms held right over Sonic, and then the handle was turned a few times. Black and gray particulates emerged from the bottom of the object, directly into Sonic's nose. "Oh no! No!" Sonic said in dismay. Judging by the burning sensation that was quick to appear in his nostrils and nasal passages, he knew full well what the substance was. Pepper. His nostrils began to flare, and just like that, he'd brought his neck back as well. He was about to sneeze. "Ah-choo! Ha-shoo! Choo! Choo!" As Sonic broke into a sneezing fit, Tails could only watch in concern, contrasting with Eggman's fiendishly delighted expression. As worried as Tails was, however, the fox couldn't help but sport an irritated expression as he looked up at Eggman, not letting Sonic's sneezing fit interrupt him. "Okay, I've seen you do some evil things, but this is just unforgivable." "Maybe, but at least I'm not making you two watch that violent internet cartoon all night," Eggman retorted. Tails didn't quite know what he was talking about, but Sonic did, even though the amount of irritation from the pepper kept him distracted from it. In an attempt to keep any more sneezes from escaping, Sonic reached up to place his forefinger underneath his nose, but it was no use. The scent of the pepper was just too much for him to take, and he had to release a few more times. Achoo! Achoo! Shoo! Ha! Ah! Ha! Shoo! With the final sneeze, Sonic expelled the last of the pepper from his nose, at the cost of blowing himself a few inches backward. As Sonic now lay sprawled on the grassy lawn, rubbing his nose repeatedly with his forefinger, Eggman gave another evil laugh, happy over his successful trick, as Tails rushed over to Sonic to help him up. "Gesundheit, Sonic," Tails said as Sonic kept rubbing his nose. The poor hedgehog's eyes were watering, similar to when Tails' own eyes were watering following his allergy-induced sneezing fit earlier, and his nose had a mild red shade in addition to feeling a little runny. "Thanks. That spicy pepper sure is powerful," Sonic commented, sniffling gingerly. He could somehow still feel the faint scent of the pepper, but it didn't bother him as much as it did moments ago. It just made him wish he was less sensitive to the spice, or better yet, that the spice didn't have such a pungent aroma. "How's that for a trick, Sonic?" Eggman taunted. "Was it something to sneeze at, or what? Mwah! Ah, 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 ah." "Oh, brother," Sonic sighed to himself as he rolled his eyes. It was only after that he finally removed his hand from his nose. "Well, I definitely didn't see it coming." "Neither did I," said Tails. "I'm assuming this is for all the times we've defeated you this year?" "Of course! But since that gave me such a good laugh, I suppose you two could use a little compensation." Eggman descended his ship further before stepping out. He reached into his pockets, pulling out two small things, a pack of gum and a can of rainbow jelly beans. "Interested?" he asked with a bit of a glimmer in his glasses. Although they were both a bit skeptical, Sonic and Tails accepted the treats. Sonic took the pack of gum, and Tails took the jelly beans. Thanks, Eggman?" Sonic asked, not sure whether to mean it. "Don't mention it," Eggman replied, stepping back into his ship. "Well, I'd better be heading off now. Enjoy your treats." With that, he slowly ascended back into the air. Tails eyed his can of jelly beans with a look of suspicion, before putting his hand on the lid at the top. "Hey, Sonic, if I open these, would you like some?" "Sure, as long as they're the good kind and not the ones that taste like—" Sonic didn't get to finish his sentence before Tails pulled the lid off. But instead of the jelly beans that were supposedly waiting inside, some sort of black and red bags emerged from the can and went flying all over the place. "Ah!" Sonic and Tails gave a collective yelp of surprise, their hearts each skipping a beat in the process. As the last of the bags settled, Tails sulked in slight disappointment, having realized he'd been tricked again. "Well, you might not have gotten those jelly beans, but at least I've got some gum," Sonic acknowledged. He looked down at it and pulled its piece from its opening, only for a mild shock to surge through his body, starting with his fingertips. "Ow!" Sonic's eyes widened and irises shrunk in pain, and as the shock subsided, he dropped the gun and held his fist in his free hand. What kind of gum is this?" "Happy Halloween!" Eggman called, laughing evilly over his successful tricks as his airship finally drove away from Sonic and Tails. Sonic and Tails looked at each other and shared a sigh of resignation. Eggman just never gave up, even on Halloween. Achoo! Sonic suddenly fired down one more sneeze, and a small amount of clear mucus emerged from his nose. As he resumed rubbing his nose with his forefinger, he assumed to himself that the remnants of the shock brought on by the gum had somehow found their way to his nose, which led to this sneeze. Thankfully, the fluid didn't hit Tails, although he instantly regained the look of concern he'd had after Sonic had initially finished sneezing. "Bless you, Sonic," Tails said. "Thank you." Sonic sniffled as he continued to rub his nose, embarrassed over the fact that his nose had started running. He set down his trick-or-treat bag for a moment before reaching his free hand into one of the pockets of his overalls that were part of his costume. It didn't feel like there was anything inside. Tails? Tissue? Let me see." Tails brought his hand into his own pocket, before smiling as he retrieved a single tissue. It was this that he offered to Sonic. "Here you go." "Thanks." Sonic gave an appreciative smile as he blew his nose quietly into the tissue. Although it was enough to clear the mucus from the outside of his nostrils, he could still feel a bit of congestion inside as he wiped his nose with that same tissue. "I'm probably gonna need more than this, though."
"Hey, Sonic. Bless you."
A familiar female voice greeted him. Sonic and Tails turned their heads, seeing that Amy was standing before them, still in her cute witch costume. "Hey, Amy," they replied. "Thanks, but I wasn't really sneezing there. Not anymore, anyway," Sonic explained. He sniffled a bit.
"I know, but I heard you doing some really loud sneezes a few minutes ago, and I was thinking I could cheer you up,"
Amy said. "I appreciate the idea, Ames, but I don't really see how." Sonic rubbed his nose again with his forefinger, balling up his gently used tissue and placing it in his pocket.
"Remember when I got my wand and I tried some spells on you?"
Amy started.
"Well, what if I did this?"
She brought out her wand and began waving it in some sort of elegant pattern, causing a small cloud of pink sparkles to appear from its top. She didn't even have to say anything. This must have been one of the few spells that didn't have a spoken incantation preceding them. Tails couldn't believe his eyes. "Amy has a magic wand? I thought she had a hammer." Sonic, on the other hand, just sniffled as he looked on, forefinger still under nose. "Your guess is as good as mine, but at least it goes with that costume." With the final swish of her wand, Amy finished her spell, holding out her free hand and watching as the sparkles descended down to it. Once they'd gotten close enough, they formed some sort of shape, and then they disappeared, revealing what the formation was. It was a clean, light blue handkerchief, about the same shade of blue as Tails' eyes, as soft as fresh polyester and ready to be used. And to top it all off, the magic from Amy's spell had rendered it tangible.
"For you, Sonic."
Amy held the soft blue cloth out for Sonic to take. Sonic's expression, at first a mixture of surprise and disbelief, softened to a grateful smile. A handkerchief was just what he needed after the amount of sneezing he'd been through tonight. He accepted the handkerchief from Amy and wiped his nose with it, smiling as the silky material provided relief to his nose. "Thanks, Amy," Sonic said.
"You're welcome, Sonic,"
Amy replied, keeping her smile. "That's really thoughtful of you, Amy," Tails commented. "Though I had no idea you had magic. It does work well with the witch costume, though." His compliment made Amy blush a bit, so she decided to explain.
"It's kind of a long story. I don't understand how it happened myself, but a while back I received a heart wand and a book of spells from someone, so I've been trying out magic. That being said, I thought Sonic's nose could use a helping hand thanks to all the sneezing he's been doing lately. But luckily, my book just so happens to have a spell that can materialize a free handkerchief that never disappears after it's brought into the world. So I decided to try it out and put it to good use."
She turned back to Sonic, finishing,
"By the way, don't worry about returning that handkerchief. It's all yours now."
"Thank you so much, Amy," said Sonic, genuinely grateful and meaning every word. "I remember you telling me your magic can do some pretty cool things, but this means a lot to me. You don't know how much this is going to save me."
"It's the least I could do, Sonic-Goo. I'm going to go back to trick-or-treating now. Happy Halloween!"
With that, Amy walked away, with Sonic and Tails waving goodbye to her as they watched her go. Once she was out of earshot, Sonic placed what was now his handkerchief in his pocket for later. "We should probably get back to trick-or-treating too, huh, buddy?" Sonic asked. "Well, you did say those candies weren't going to collect themselves," Tails acknowledged. He and Sonic shared a laugh as they resumed their Halloween adventure together. It might have gone off to a weird start on account of Eggman's tricks, but they wouldn't let him deter them, of course. The candies they received, as well as Amy's act of kindness, had provided them with a silver lining, and if anything, they were glad it had only been petty tricks rather than actual harm. Since then, Sonic made sure to bring the handkerchief with him whenever he was out running through the zones or fighting Eggman, just to be safe. And whenever he brought it out to wipe his nose after something had made him sneeze, he would be reminded of Amy's words, but mostly of the fact that she'd provided him with this gift out of concern for him as well as the goodness of her heart, something he wouldn't have any other way. Besides, with how sensitive his nose was becoming, and how he'd been more prone to sneezing from things, Sonic had a feeling he was going to need this handkerchief for quite a while. The end. Happy Halloween, everybody.